let's go. Let's start, yeah. So back to Matthew. Uh, uh, I don't remember. Uh, in the last time, uh, did we cover the last uh, little provocation about the question, what is the ultimate law commandment? Even though anyway, we can repeat it anyway. We can repeat it anyway. So, and it goes right before the fourth part in which Jesus assumes his divine identity and accuses his opponents. So let us ask Mary to read for us 6 verses. It's Matthew 22, 34, 40.
But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they came together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets.
Thank you. Thank you. So actually, he answers with a creed, Jewish creed, it starts with this, Shema Israel, listen Israel. You have the one God and so on and so forth. But obviously they're following about the love to neighbor, but it's not usually pronounced, but Jesus adds it to here. So you shall love your neighbor as yourself. So I kind of he balances love to God, to love to your fellow person near you. But what is interesting is that they didn't have to say anything on it. So it was accepted somehow. It was accepted and they were silenced. They were silenced. Now, if we look at the parallel columns in synoptics, Mark put it in the same place. In the end of the gospel. Luke put it in the middle, in his middle. So it might be actually asked several times. But in Matthew, it is significant because that is how Jesus closes, so to say, the discussions with the religious rulers. And he kind of wraps it up, coming to the essential commandment, which is actually undisputable from the religious point of view. So by that, he said, all your possible accusation of heresy against me are groundless. So you see, that's it. And that's how they stopped. Because he put them into, the very beginning. It's like an expression of your creed. And so he kind of stamped it, sealed it. God gives this commandment, and God-man seconds it, so to say, in front of the authorities. And that's why they didn't ask any more questions. Before we go to the next part, do you have any comments or questions? I don't think that. But, reflections. If not, then we just go to the last part of this conversation, which is definitely, and in my view, absolutely unquestionably, theophany, the manifestation of his divine authorities. And he speaks with the same people, but it's not them who ask questions from him, which he answered. No. So it is chapter 22, 41, it's a long part, to chapter 23, 39. So Jesus first silences his opponents with a question on the Son of David, as David's ultimate Lord, as David's ultimate Lord. Then Jesus accuses scribes and Pharisees in front of the people and his disciples, and there are several indictments. So then Jesus assumes his identity of the ultimate king and judge. I am sending you prophets. But we'll come to it. Okay, right now let us read Matthew 22, 41, 46. If Mary can do it for us, we'll be grateful.
Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, "What do you think of the Christ? Whose son is he?" They said to him, "The son of David." He said to them, "How is it then that David, inspired by the Spirit, calls him Lord, saying, 'The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put thy enemies under thy feet'? If David thus calls him Lord, how is he his son?" And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare to ask him any more questions.
Okay. Okay. So it's a reference to the Psalm 2nd, I believe. The Lord said to my Lord. So, and Jesus asked the question about the Messiah. Who in their understanding is a Messiah? And since they think within the tradition, within the scriptural tradition, they answer that he's a son of David. He's in the line of the Davidic kings, though those kings already no kings any longer. But they carry the promise. But then he asked, what about David's understanding of his own position? Was he himself saw himself as the ultimate, so to say, Messiah, that he can, give down the same status to his descendants? It looks like he does not. So, and what is interesting is that he silenced them with this. He silenced them. No one was able to answer him a word. No, from that day did anyone dare to ask him any questions. So we have the same parallel position of this episode in Mark, in the very end of his in the very end of his confrontation with the authorities. And actually only two of them recorded it, Matthew and and Mark. No, I'm sorry. Sorry. Luke also does it. Luke also does it. So they all three uh, took it as a very important and significant statement of the divinity of the Messiah. Okay, now Jesus starts to speak to them. And it's all chapter 23, 136. Setting first. He addresses people and his disciples, but in the presence of the authorities, which are kind of standing and listening all this silently. We can imagine what was boiling within them in that very moment. Okay, so let us go from 23rd 1 to 7 first, Mary.
Then said Jesus to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. So practice and observe whatever they tell you, but not what they do, for they preach, but they do not practice. They bind heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by men, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long, and they love the place of honor at feasts and the best seats in synagogues and salutations in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by men."
Okay, so let's stop here. Yeah, that is obviously a serious accusation to religion as such. Yes, but it started with Pharisees. So the first it's abuse of the power. Very, by the way, interesting. Very important point. Abuse of the power. Because the power actually was given to them. It's not their power. They, clergy, everybody, So it's not the clergy itself. It's the Pharisees who assume also the leadership as a spiritual and social leadership of the people. So they are organizing force of these people, and they organize them by the authority of the divine law. So that's accusation. That they first of all assume this authority over the people. Why? Why over? Because what's important here they bind heavy burdens hard to bear and lay them on man's shoulder. On man's shoulder. They do not hold them. Yeah. But do not move them with their finger. So that is a first very important point he makes. Heavy burden. What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, what's there to discuss? It's so obvious in how clergy have acted, especially in the past, in the Middle Ages, but we see it even now. So,
Does it also not, is it not just, are we not talking just about this kind of externality, but is it reflecting back to chapter 6 where Christ is saying to practice things in secret and the internality of our relationship? Is it sort of a contrasting, contrasting with that? Does it, does Matthew want us to look back and see this kind of contrast?
Yes. It's interesting that how these things are counted in Mark and Luke. So let's read it in Mark. It is chapter 12, also, by the end of the gospel, 37b 40. And the great throng heard him gladly. And in his teaching, he said, beware of the scribes who like to go about in long robes and to have salutations in the marketplaces and the best seats in the synagogue and the places of honor and feast, who devour widows' houses and for pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. Yep, that's what he said in Mark. Yeah, Luke, that's chapter 20, totally in that. In the hearing of all the people, he said to his disciples, beware of the scribes. And about the same thing that we read in Mark. In Matthew, though, it is addressed to Pharisees because, scribes, they were just, we could say, scholars. So they were invited where rulers needed learned opinion. Pharisees, on the other hand, possessed power and looked for it. And they were very jealous to this, toward any other who would challenge their power. So Jesus' accusation goes right into the very heart of the matter. And obviously, it is here that he ignites them, I believe, ultimately against himself. It is completely prophetic speech. So what is it? The people were gladly hearing him in Mark. Yeah, and the great throng heard him gladly because they were also kind of bound by these things. They were, under these burdens of the law. We have also our own canon law. So I just read a small book of our former friend and dean at St. Vladimir, John Erickson, the challenger of our past, who described how, canon was turned into the nomon. Actually, canon as a rule, just turned into the law in nomocanon. But it was a state action when the church became kind of connected with state. When the church became state church. So, and it started to rule the same way as a state. So making its own, so to say, internal discipline into law, kind of turning itself to institution. Yeah. So obviously this is very, very much to the point for us. I don't know how it is, how now it is relevant for the synagogue. Maybe it is, but actually that it is, I would say, perpetual temptation that goes through for any religious institution. For me, it's obvious. You know, the question is how you make the distinction. You know, we can understand. Let's look at the Pharisees. So from their point of view, I believe this accusation was completely, I would say, not ungrounded, but unfair. Unfair. Why? Because that is the burden of the law, which to some extent the world around them didn't need much. There were the Romans. Who cares in this empire about the Jewish law? Like in any empire. Who cares about the law? So to make an effort to introduce this law or to keep it marching, working, is an effort of life, right? So they were proud of themselves that they are carrying this burden of preaching it, of imposing it. You know, if I impose this, it's enough. It's already enough burden. Why should I carry it myself, or to some extent? You know, I'm fantasizing, you know, making kind of some reflecting on these things. This statement, I believe, these accusations, these indictments are such a revolutionary that they continue to be challenging. What do you think about it? You know, I belong to this, you know, to this class, this position. As one Richard pointed out to me, I'm a man of a cloth. So, and they were also men of a cloth. And that's exactly what he says about them. You know, who like to go about in long robes like we do. Who else goes in their cassocks around? So we don't like to go in. So it's too challenging in this contemporary world. And why are we doing it? But it is a symbol, you know. So to some extent, you know, look at the religious Jew today, somewhere in the middle of the Brooklyn or somewhere, you know, in July, in his black clothes, huge fur hat, under 95 degrees or something. It's not that makes him comfortable. It's a statement. It's to be the fool for God's sake, right? The Pharisees, to some extent, they saw themselves in rather same function. So their sticking to the law was, you know, it's maybe my professional kind of look at these things. They said it's essential for them. And then Jesus accuses them. So straight forward. Okay, if you don't want to say something about it or just share your opinion, let's go on then. Now, first of all, what he addresses here. He addresses them as assuming the ultimate authority. But now, the next point is, but whose ultimate authority actually is? Who possesses ultimate authority? And it will be said in 23, 8 to 12, Mary.
But you are not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brethren.
Oh my goodness.
And call no man your father on earth, for you have one Father who is in heaven, Christ. He who is greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted.
Father Michael, all of us look for someone who can be an authority. I mean, I rely on myself, but I need someone to show me that I'm doing the right thing. What he's saying is so radical that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. We just don't think that way. We tend to want to find an authority.
Yeah. That is a challenge, Jennifer. That's his challenge. But, you know, I just know it by experience, you know, my life experience. We run an institution. And that's, you know, and running an institution itself is kind of a challenge. Because this institution, so to say, and it's a problem of the church in the contemporary world, is not straightly relevant, so to say. Everything else runs smoothly and efficiently. But, you know, I'm talking about today. Let's say institutions, religious institutions in general throughout the history. They're important. Yes. And because of that, you know, but only why? Because behind them there is divine authority. And every human being in his heart, from time to time, realizes his dependence on this authority. But this authority is beyond. So we're not talking about mystics. We're talking about just us. And so we need authority. And who are the authority which are middlemen, so to say? That's a religious institution.
Father Michael,
Yes, sure, go ahead.
what I think that only God is without sins, and all the others, even bishops and rabbis and all other authorities, which are speaking with the help of God and even can forgive us our sins as a middleman. But as a man, as a person, you are not without sin. That's why you also need to go to your other authority, other priest, and say about these sins. So, and he tried to distinguish the doings and words, because the words are right, because words are from God. But doings, they are not from God, they are from human being nature and from human activity. That's what I think.
Sure, Rusina. Let's again, what says here? But you're not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher and you are all brethren. Means that you know, even this power, he just reminds us, it's a reflection. It's a reflection of the power of one teacher. and call no man your father on earth. What does he mean? He doesn't mean the father on earth as a model. We'll look at some, it is in our life. It is so common to find out some kind of a human model of behavior or ultimate authority. Let's say in our political life in the United States, we not only look on the elected representatives whom we elect because what they reflect different interests, different powers that kind of brought one another. But we'll look at them as a moral authority also. That's how we listen to them. I mean, it's natural things. So Jesus does not abolish all these things. He just reminds to those who bear any, who have any instruments of power, and particularly religious power, that they are especially under authority of the divine teacher or lawgiver. It is, he's not abolishing it. He just thinks that, you don't realize who God is. So he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. In John, that's chapter 13, just at the beginning of the Last Supper, which actually is a Passover meal. It's the last Passover meal of Jesus with his disciples. What he does, he gives an example, as he said. He starts to wash the feet of his disciples, frightening Peter. So all of them were amazed, but Peter even protested. Yeah, how come? And Jesus explains, you call me master, and you are right. But if I, your master and teacher, wash your feet, that means you must do the same thing to each other, which is not easy, definitely, my dear friends. So it is not that, Jesus just puts into the center of it what is invisible. And what is invisible, what we don't think too much about it. Infinite humility of God, which is revealed in Jesus Christ. So Messiah reveals the divine humility. And that's the beginning of it. So he speaks as a teacher to all these people. So they represent his power. That's what he said to them. You are ruling not by your own power. You're ruling by my power, whom you don't recognize. Why you didn't recognize me? You didn't recognize me because you have the wrong image of my Father, of God of Israel. For you, God of Israel has ultimate authority, ultimate power. Obviously, he does because he's a creator. But you completely misses his infinite humility in front of his creation. So you have to balance your power with this humility. And how can you do it? Only by putting the authority of the divine figure. It's not, he just, I'm here and you don't see me. I'm in your midst. And you don't see me. because you don't recognize God. You can't recognize him. Holding to power, you can't recognize the one who gives up his power, who came to wash your feet down from heaven. And that's exactly what maybe God is doing to maintain the creation, which emerges into life and then falls down into death. So you have to support it somehow. As Jesus will say, I'm preaching. I don't want to preach. I don't want to preach on this. I just want us to kind of to enter into these words, into this situation, and to some extent, the dramatic import of these things from both parts. Pharisees, who are, the one who listens in front of the people. They cannot tear him apart, which they would like to do, because he takes their authority from them, tears this authority from them in front of their flock, so to say. But he does it as God. Without it, we can't understand, not to talk to John, even Matthew. And the more he speaks, the more it becomes evident. If we can, if you don't want to add anything to it, we can read a little bit on. Let's say, okay, then we can come back. 23, all right. If you don't want to add anything to the discussion at this point, we can read a little bit longer. We can read a little bit on. So he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Actually, from our Christian point of view, nothing new. But even from Jewish point of view, nothing new. It's obviously in front of the Most High, we are so establishing hierarchy. So who is on the top of this hierarchy to begin with? Okay. Do you want to continue? Mary?
13 through
Yes.
16 or 15?
Yes, we can read to 32 to the end.
Oh, okay. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut the kingdom of heaven against men, for you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense you make long prayer, therefore you will receive the greater condemnation. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you traverse sea and land to make a single proselyte, and when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, if anyone swears by the temple, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gold of the temple, he is bound by his oath. You blind fools, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that has made the gold sacred? And you say, if anyone swears by the altar, it is nothing. But if anyone swears by the gift that is on the altar, he is bound by his oath. You blind men,
It's funny.
which is greater, the gift or the altar that makes the gift sacred? So he who swears by the altar swears by it and everything on it. And he who swears by the temple swears by it and by him who dwells there, who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. These you ought to have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides, straining out a gnat and swallowing a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you cleanse the outside of the cup and of the plate, but inside they are full of extortion and rapacity. You blind Pharisee, first cleanse the inside of the cup and of the plate, that the outside also may be clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which outwardly appear beautiful, but within they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. So you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous, saying, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have taken part with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. Thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up then the measure of your fathers. You serpents, you brood of vipers, how are you to escape being sentenced to hell? Therefore I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of the innocent Abel to the blood of Zechariah, the son of Barachiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. Truly I say to you, all this will come upon this generation.
Mary, thank you very much. So let us start with the last one. Yes, with the last sentence. Therefore, I send you prophets and wise men and scribes, some of whom you will kill and crucify, and some you will scourge in your synagogues and persecute from town to town, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of innocent Abel to the blood of Zechariah. So it's a divine indictment. You know, he's not a prophet any longer even. It's the divine voice. I am sending to you in the past, in the present, you know, just we can look at this. Yes, I send you prophets and let's see, 37. Idu ego apostelo pro Simon, prophetis offusque grammatis. It said in the present. So it's always in the present. I'm sending you, not I send in the past, no, I send in future. I am sending. So he speaks from absolute now as a divine figure in front of them. So that's from actually these things we should look back to it, to the whole these indictments about, you know, small things or minor things, but what all of these accusations are precisely because those who possess the power miss the divine authority of the one who sends the prophets and teachers and I send you prophets and wise men and scribes. So they all have their place in the divine dispensation. Not against, that is not against the scribes, because he also sent the scribes and wise men and prophets. So it is taking into consideration the one who is the ultimate source of this thing. So, dear friends, what is your? It is so powerful from from the beginning to the end.
It's very interesting how it immediately gets corroborated. Well, not immediately, but very soon gets corroborated with him talking about Jerusalem, how I wanted to gather it. You,
Yeah, it will be the next thing. Yeah, right after that. Yeah, after that, right after that, he speaks.
It gets confirmed very strong. It is switch of tone becomes very powerful.
Yeah, he speaks of it. But right now, we don't have anything of this strength in other gospels. So it is Matthew. So first of all, Matthew emphasizes the divine power of it, which is behind. So Jesus assumed here his divine authority. He speaks to them as God himself. Interesting, Luke, it just says, wait. Interesting that in Luke, it is not God, but it's a divine wisdom. In Luke, therefore also the wisdom of God said, I will send them prophets and apostles. Some of them they will kill and persecute. That the blood of all the prophets shed from the foundation of the world may be required of this generation, from the blood of Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who perished between the altar and the sanctuary. Yes, I tell you, it shall be required of this generation. So that's what Matthew said. That was Luke recorded, but it's the words of the divine wisdom. Interesting. It's interesting. It's divine wisdom that said this. So, but anyway, we don't go into theology of the Son of God and the divine wisdom here. It's just about the divine authority that seals the whole, this j'accuse, like accusation against them. So he does it as a prophet. He does it as God himself. So he, it's extremely I don't find the words even to take upon oneself a lot to accuse a whole institution of the temple, of religion, of his people with these words. So it's so powerful that in my explanations are kind of meager, pale away in front of it.
Father Michael, could you comment on why does he say from the blood of Abel to Zechariah? I don't quite know which Zechariah that is, but why Abel? Why does he include it? Well, this person, well, Abel was killed by his brother. It's a personal murder. It's true that it's an archetypical murder, that he sort of introduced murder into human history in a sense. But why would the institution of Hebrew teachers and lawgivers would be responsible for that.
But they continue. You know, they preach as we do in the name of the living God. God is life. You know, in the beginning, Torah said, when God invites people to sign the covenant with Him, God has said, "Life and death I lay today in front of you. Choose life, because God is life." So particularly when death comes from the institution that rules in the name of God of life, it is double denomination, abomination. You know, we still remember the Inquisition, so on and so forth, you know, centuries and centuries ago. Though there were such much more, increasingly, incomparably more bloodshed after the Inquisition and beyond the Inquisition. And anyway, you know, so if you go back to his history of Inquisition, it's rather limited. But it's so, nothing hurted the life of the Christian church that like Inquisitions, not only in Catholic Church, in Protestant, and so in Orthodox we have something different, but also of the same type. Nothing. These revolutions, you know, the atheism, it's mainly, again, that's it. Okay, someone wants to say something. Olga, unmute yourself first.
Yes, Larissa asked something very specific, why he makes them responsible, and you partly answered it, but it just occurred to me also that it matters in what, also in what capacity he is speaking. He is speaking here, especially as a creator, you know, so to him, it's one single vista, everything he's describing. And so he, meanwhile, is also in that capacity commenting on original sin, on how we all get it. And he holds them responsible because they're supposed to testify to the opposite. Yes, but also he specifies what this opposite is. In other words, why killing is always a sin. Because it's traceable back to the innocent Abel. So it matters what his authority stems from, I think, to understand what you are questioning, you know, what you're asking about. In what, not only how he reproaches them, but also in this whole, you know, sudden switch to complete and shocking switch to complete authority. He is the one sending the prophets and the wise men. He is the one who can easily trace any murder to the blood of Abel, because that's how it's said from a totally different point of view. Suddenly we see who he is from that.
Mm-hmm. And I want to mention that in this here, when he's talking about Abel, he is talking about all of this will come on this generation. Before he was talking about Pharisees and scribes, but now he is talking about whole generation.
I think there is a little bit of a problem there, because generations, the word door and the sense of, you know, genus, it could go both horizontally and vertically. You know, it could actually present, I mean, in the biblical language, it could present a lineage. So it actually, you know, it really, we understand by it either one or the other. But the way he says it is essentially your kind, your sort. And this is one of the meanings of this word, in a way. So it could be, it doesn't have to be just generation in our sense of the people of the same age, people born the same year or something of the sort. It could be vertical. This is
Could be, yes, yes, could be, yes. I'm just telling about possible.
Mhm.
And if you will look for history, his prophecy will come to completion, and it affected everybody, not only teachers and Pharisees.
Yes, in this particular generation or the next generation, you know, in couple of generations, right? That's exactly what happened to, you know, history is a mystery. What can I say? It is a mystery. But the, you know, the increasing of the bloodshed leads to more bloodshed, more bloodshed. That's what started, you know, the First World War didn't finish just when it finished. It produced revolutions and then horrible regimes all over the Europe, more or less. We know Russia. But then came the Second World War. So we are lucky that we didn't live in those periods.
I think that he's speaking about innocent blood, including himself, including his blood, and that this generation will be witnesses of the other victim of his innocent blood. That's what I think he also means.
But coming back to Larissa's point, I want to say that she makes very important, it was a first brotherly murder. One brother killed the other. So when Jesus says about, who was Zechariah? The blood of Zechariah is the son of Barahiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary of the altar. So he was your brother, Zechariah. He was a brother, you know, in your kind of fjords amongst them yourself, you know, in this religious fjords, you murder your own. So each murder from position of one father of all life is a brotherly, obviously, murder, because, you know, Wollens Nolens, we may not be in good relationship with our brother, with you know, with our kins, and maybe in very good relationship, but we may be also, we may hate each other. That happens. So, but every martyr from this perspective of the God as alive is a martyr, and it is brotherly martyr. That's how it looks like from first of all, from our conscience, from real, you know, common sense, with which we can read these words. And it was always a problem, you know, in human hearts. When, let's say, the problems that all pacifists raised, or, you know, all societies when they abolishes death sentence for criminals, you know, it's what stands behind it. Significance of the significance of the sacredness of life, of its divine origin of life. Why this generation? Because this generation was a witness of the coming of the God of life in their midst. One opposed directly from the brotherly point of view, because he was their brother. Even if they did not believe in his divinity, He was a prophet of their midst, who might say to them unpleasant things, but no more. But he healed their sick after all. So in their deliberate attempt to kill him was already this murderous intention. That's why in John he will say, but you're doing the work of your father. He say, what father? Satan, because he was the first murderer. He was martyr of men from the very beginning, as well as a liar and the father of such. So it's direct accusation. Or other people who were just like we, living our life, day to day. There's a great prophets around, but we run after our own affairs. And so we let him die as the people, are the people of Jerusalem who, on the one hand, stand there in front of him when they needed him. But he was taken away from them at night. He was sentenced where everybody was sleeping. It's a responsibility for our being, not watchful. As Jesus will say in the last parables about the watchfulness. That he will say only to his disciples already, to those watchfulness. Okay, but I don't want to preach here. I just really want to understand it more together with you, how we do understand, because it's difficult things. It's difficult because it's not affected just this generation from Abel to Zechariah. Since Zechariah, the son of Barachiah, many others went this way. Not without our either participation or just, tolerance toward it. So therefore, it's very relevant, all these things. Very relevant. Okay, what else do we want to say before we adjourn for today? Okay, then, dear friends, maybe we'll see some of you in the evening with our Vespers. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
For sharing,
Thank
for
you.
sharing the reading of this text, which is so challenging in all times.
Thank you, Father Michael.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.